All right. As a lot of you know, this is my favorite class because if we could get this one 100%, we could pretty well forget about all the rest of them. That's how important it is. You know, we've been told for decades that, well, at least for the last 2 decades, that we are what we eat. And I know that as myself, a lot of you have discovered that no, it goes a little deeper than that. And we found that we actually eat according to how we feel. And through several methods, I've observed the connection between our thoughts, our emotions, and the crystallized form that we call the physical body. There is a direct scientific link between the three, and to doubt that is just going to inhibit our success in whatever it is that we want to create. I think every single person in this room has discovered already that food alone is not the solution. We live in a world of cause and effect, and if the body and the quality of the body is the end resulting effect, it's going to be very, very important for us to understand as clearly as we can all levels of cause for why the body not only structures itself the way that it does, but according to the function. And probably the easiest scientific link between cause and effect, with the body being in the middle, is through hair analysis that of course evaluates the mineral levels and mineral ratios of the tissue of the body, which the tissue level of minerals is different from the blood levels or the urine levels or anything else. The tissue level of minerals controls the function of every gland and organ in our body. When you look at a hair analysis report, what they call the engine of the body shows up in the first 4 major minerals: calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. Those regulate other minerals. It's a cascade from those 4 major minerals right on down. Now, as regulators, you can take a look at the tissue levels and ratios of those minerals and know the function of every gland and organ in your body pretty well, because it's the ratios between those that determine whether your thyroid is overactive or underactive, and what your adrenal glands are doing, and cascading right on down. Now, for those who don't understand the truth about hair analysis, they will think, okay, high calcium, that means you're getting too much calcium. Low sodium, you're not getting enough sodium, and so on and so forth. Has nothing to do with your intake or the lack thereof. It is a psychological profile of the individual. When the calcium, a great example of that is calcium alone. When you have calcium off the chart, when it's so high like that, that doesn't say that you are consuming too many calcium-rich foods. It means that you're not dealing with stress very well, or you're being overwhelmed with stress, because the body uses calcium as a sedative to sedate us. Okay? When a person needs to be sedated on and on and on, pretty soon you load the tissue with so much calcium that you either develop spasms in the muscles, arthritis, or if you think about the heart as a muscle, when it gets accumulated with too much calcium, it starts contracting more than it's relaxing. And if you stop and think about a spasm in the muscle, and you think about a Charlie horse, if you get a Charlie horse in the heart, what do you call that? Heart attack. Game over. Okay? And so when you look at that, the correlation between the calcium buildup in the muscles, the heart attack, and the individual's emotional focus, you see parallels between all 3 of those. The body literally is the crystallized form of our emotions. And so before we get deeper into the main topic of the class tonight, what I want to do, for simplification, I want to talk about the 2 expressions that we mainly are. Okay, we're very aware of the lie that the mirror told us. The mirror said that this is me, because every time I looked in the mirror, this is what I saw. Okay, well, that's one expression. But there's another expression I refer to this expression as being the animal, because this physical form is an animal that has been on the planet being driven by fear to survive for thousands of years. Now that's really important to gain a greater understanding of the expression of this physical animal. Now the other expression is the pure essence of life. And this we call the soul. I'm doing some writings right now that I'm referring to as anima and the animal. Anima is an ancient term for soul. And so the comparison between anima and the animal, we see two major expressions here. And they're actually, when you think about it, they're quite opposite expressions. One is a knee-jerk animalistic reaction, and the other is an unconditional loving response. One, you could say, is the conscience of the body. It's the, if you think about cartoons that we saw when we were kids, and you see the little cartoon character with little angel on one shoulder and the little devil on the other. Here's the little devil between our ears, and here's the little angel. It's the symbolic representation was great in childhood to see a cartoon like that, because it helps us to understand why we have kind of animalistic reactions to things people say and do. And then on the other hand, why we can sometimes be more accepting and a little kinder in our reactions. So let's look at some of the goal here for this understanding is quality of life. That's really all that matters. It's okay, what is the good of all this information? If it doesn't improve the quality of our lives, it's probably worthless, right? Okay, this I have found to be the absolute secret to increasing and improving the quality of our lives. Without this, we as cause continue in our self-destructive ways. Now as adults, has anybody here recognized that adults are generally self-destructive?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, we all know that to be a fact, but we've never really been told why. And that's what I want to make sure that we all understand thoroughly tonight, is not only why we're self-destructive, but how to move from the deep end of the pool to the shallow end, because as long as we have one of these meat bodies, we are going to be self-destructive. It's just that it's a whole lot better to be less self-destructive, and that's one of the struggles of life, is to move from total self-destruct to hopefully almost no destruction, no self-destruct. Okay, now, the reason why tonight's class is so important is because this is what I found to be the master cause of all disease. Okay, when you're dealing with the master cause of all disease, obviously we're talking about a serious undermining of the quality of life. It's impossible to have this cause so firmly in place and experience any real quality of life. We can force our bodies to be healthier than they would naturally be by effort, but as long as cause is in place. This is why life is always teaching us, if we discover a cause, life teaches us over and over again that if we don't discover and correct the cause for this effect, the effect is either going to remain or return. Okay, so we've got to look at the same principle with our own bodies. If symptoms keep reoccurring, we've got to know that treatment is not correcting the cause. Treatment is almost always temporarily alleviating the effect. So in a world of cause and effect, it is a fool's game to keep treating the effect and hoping to get a different result. We've got to understand all levels of cause for why the quality of life is diminished in the body and correct those causes. And then, as predictable as anything else in life, when you follow the right principles, we can anticipate successful and complete solution. And this is what we're looking for, is we want true solution. And the best solution is to create something that doesn't have to be fixed. We've been led to believe all of our lives that the breakdowns in the body are issues that need to be fixed. And so we keep fixing, keep fixing, keep fixing. But life has taught us in every other area that no, you can't keep fixing, fixing, fixing. You've got to correct the actual cause. And so with the human body, we need a thorough understanding of the master cause of all disease, which is the self-destruct. Now, where in the world do we come up with self-destructive tendencies? Well, we learn them from our parents and grandparents and everybody around us. Industry also supports human self-destruct. But the real long-term cause for human self-destruct is the principle of expectation. It's locked into the principle of expectation. Now, we have all heard it all of our lives that life gives us exactly what we expect, no more and no less. Okay? So it's our expectation that determines the choices we make in life and the things that we do. How do we develop our expectation? It's according to what has happened before. What has happened in our past is what establishes our expectation. Now, in every cell of our bodies is the memory of the traumatic experiences of our parents, our grandparents, and our great-grandparents. At least 3 generations. If there's something really horrible in the 4th generation, it also will come up. But generally, it's 3 generations. Now, what about our own lives? We have that recorded here. Now, here's the secret to expectation. You have the brain working exactly the same way as our immune system. If our immune system feels that it's under attack, what it's going to do is scan the chemistry memory to determine how it was attacked in a previous way, so that it knows how to defend itself, right? Okay, we hear that. That's how the immune system works. Okay, well, the brain works exactly the same way. If the brain feels like it's being attacked, it's going to scan its memory. But it isn't just a chemistry memory. It's everything that we have here from since we first became aware. Who knows at what stage of gestation that was while we were in the womb. We were very aware of everything our mothers felt and the environments that our parents were, or our mothers were in. Our memories began there. We have traumatic memories before we were even born because of that. We have every traumatic memory that we have experienced during our lifetimes. So that's all here, and the experiences of our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents in every cell of the body. All of that information the brain can tap into when it believes that it's under attack. So the person standing in front of you, now what is a traumatic experience? Well, first of all, let's talk about what is a trigger. Now, if you look at a pistol has a trigger, a hammer, and a bullet. Nobody has ever been hurt by a trigger. The person standing in front of you, no matter what they said or did, they are a trigger. Here's the clue. We feel, when we get angry, sad, or have some experience, strong emotion that gets triggered up, the reason why we feel it here is because this is the highest point of awareness in the body. This is the seat of the soul, and we have brain cells in this area. It's the highest point of awareness. So when the brain is looking at a memory, either in our own brain or in the DNA, we are aware of it here. Now here's the clue to know whether it's here or the person standing in front of you. If it impacts on you, it is you. If it impacts on you, makes you angry, makes you sad or whatever, it's in here. It's not the person standing in front of you. Now, we've all had an experience where we've either gotten angry or something because of somebody that said something or did something. And after the experience, we walk away and we think, whoa, did I overreact to this situation or what? Well, let's take a closer look at that. We may have overreacted to what was said or done in front of us, but we didn't overreact to whatever the brain was looking at. The brain can go back and see a very traumatic experience 3 generations back, something that is maybe beyond anything we've even seen. Now with that thought, let's think about the word or the term anxiety. Where does most anxiety come from? That's a method of waiting for the second shoe to fall, but you don't know when the first one did because most likely it was before you were born. That's anxiety, anticipating dread, but you don't have a clue of what it is that you're dreading. Okay? That's usually something being triggered up from the DNA. How do you deal with that? The same way as anything that triggers up from the brain or a closer period from the DNA. Okay, and we'll talk about that in a few minutes. But the main thing that I want you to see is, first of all, the difference between being made to be sad or angry or some emotion and being triggered. There's a huge difference. And most of the times that we feel sad or angry, we're being triggered. We're not being made to feel that way. Okay? So what we've got to do is take a look at, first of all, the physical body. Okay? Again, this is a survival mechanism that has been driven for thousands of years by fear to survive. What is the emotional, if we were doing charades, what would I do to show fear?
Shake.
I would shake or I would contract. Okay, fear is, when you feel fear, it contracts the muscles. In fact, every contraction in our body is associated with a continual fear that we stuff or hold. Okay? Fear, there's actually 2 major principles in the universe, especially here at this dimension. We have life, which is an expansive energy, and we have what appears to be the opposite, which is contractiveness. Contractiveness is actually, since there really is only life, contractiveness is the temporary diminishing of life. But here in this dimension, we utilize both. We need expansion and contraction for everything to work. Okay? So we honor it here. But when we have an excess amount of contractiveness within the body, that is the foundation for disease and all distortions. And what is that caused from? It's caused from us reacting to fear. Now, how fear works is, first of all, when it gets triggered, basically the brain is looking at a horrible memory, and whether we are consciously aware of it or not, which in most cases we are not consciously aware of it, but we have this feeling that, hey, it's not good, whatever it is. Fear is a natural human response to dread of that being repeated here and now. Whatever that was, we don't want to experience that right now. That's fear. Okay? And fear is very prevalent in the human experience, as you may have observed and experienced. Welcome. Okay, let's look at other character traits of the physical body. Okay? Now, between the 2 expressions, how much of the causal factors for disease is in the human expression and how much is in the soul? First of all, how much is in the human expression? 100%. How much in the soul? Close to 0. There might be something held over, but all the contractiveness is part of the animal and the animal's experience. Does that simplify it? By separating it, a lot of the thinking is, if we fast forward our lives to the end, to the point of death, and the body fell to the ground, and we were standing there as soul with a full memory of the entire lifetime, it would cause us to believe that this is all we are, and that physical body is not who we were. But it's important for a thorough understanding to recognize that we are 100% the physical body and the brain and the personality and all the junk that goes along with it, but we are also 100% the soul animating the physical body. And the reason why it's important that we see that we are actually both is for the sake of responsibility, because from a spiritual point of view, it's our responsibility to keep our animal in check. If you allow your animal to be barking and biting people, you're being irresponsible, right? And it's not out of our control. It's our purpose for being here. This is an exercise. If you go to the gym and you're lifting weights, the weights represent a resistance that we struggle against to tone the body, right? This is the resistance that the soul struggles with to become wise. Does that make sense? It's a dual dance, a dual purpose. Okay? Now, this, with the understanding that I'm hoping that we get across tonight, you'll understand very clearly why, first of all, most treatment is a waste of time. Whether it's nutritional treatment, physical treatment, or medical treatment, it doesn't matter. Because the body is brilliantly programmed to normalize its function if we will stop breaking it faster than it can fix itself. And now why doesn't that happen with all of us? Because we can't come far enough out of self-destruct to allow it. The body is a barometer. It's telling us how we're dealing with our fears in life. That's it. The body is a barometer that's just telling us how we're doing with our fears in life. You master fear, you master life. Now, why did this brilliant soul come from a spirit realm and join in this dance with this physical body? You see, back home, we were all surrounded with absolute wisdom, right? Guess what? It didn't stick. So, we needed some resistance because, as we all know, if we're in an environment of complete unconditional love and support, there's no resistance. Where there's no resistance, there's no growth. Now, what a coincidence. A young human body and a young soul, they're so much alike because neither one are willing to learn from wisdom. The proof of this is you have a very brilliant mom that stands there and says about 50,000 times, don't touch the stove, it'll burn your hand. But when does the child learn that it actually burns their hand? We've all been there. Been there, done that, again and again and again. And what happens as soon as we burned our hands? We instantly became wiser, right? This is why we've come into this physical realm, to engage with pain and suffering, because it forces us to become wise. And so we keep hurting ourselves again and again and again, and becoming more aware every time we suffer. Then by the time we've gone through about 4 decades of trial and error, and we're starting to get it that, wow, these things do hurt us, stubbing our toes, cutting our fingers, all these little things. By the time we hit around in our 40s and 50s, we start looking back a decade or two and we realize, wow, that's not happening quite as much anymore. We're getting wiser. Then we get up maybe another decade or two and we start realizing that, every time I get this gut feeling and I follow it, things turn out better than when I ignore it. Okay, now the experience, the physical experience of life, I refer to that as hell. Good term for it, right? And this little speaker box right here, I refer to as the shortcut through hell. Because when we start listening and obeying it, we don't have to suffer as much. Okay? Now, when you think about that, you realize that the body being a barometer, if you scan the body from top to bottom as a barometer, this will clarify the resistance to wisdom that we're still holding on to. To the degree that we are suffering or experiencing less than a joyful life is expressing the areas where we're still resisting the wisdom. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
That's why this is the shortcut through hell. Because to the degree that we start listening and obeying, our suffering gets less and less and less. Okay? Now, there's two major issues here. One is our resistance to listening, and the other is the negative commercials that are being played in the back of our mind 24 hours a day on an unconscious level. These commercials that are playing over and over again are the traumatic memories from here and here. We don't just get triggered by somebody saying something that upsets us or makes us sad or whatever. It can be a sound, or it can be anything. Anything can trigger us. And we're probably triggered at least a couple dozen times a day in subtle ways. We can be going along and our energy is at a good level, and then all of a sudden it takes a dip. We don't even know it, but we just got triggered. Got triggered again and again. All through the day. Why? Because if we could hear emotional, traumatic memory, we would sound like we were dragging a bunch of tin cans behind us wherever we go. If it made a sound, it would be noisy, it would be clanging, and it would be irritating. And we all carry this stuff around with us until we cut it off. It's like those are the hooks that are hooked into our belt loops and keeping us spinning our wheels and not being able to move forward. We believe that we have choice in life. Everybody believe that we have choice in life? Okay, that's a neat belief, but it isn't real. It's not true. We are programmed robots, and our choices are not wise choices. Our choices are safe choices. Because we are herded by fear like a bunch of animals. Because we choose a safer way so that there's no chance that we re-experience this. You recognize that? Okay? If we were choosing wisely, we'd all be blissing out and doing everything that we enjoy, and we'd be productive and everything being fine. Well, if we were doing that, we wouldn't be here. Okay? That would mean that we are 100% listening to the wisdom and obeying it. And come on, that's not going to happen right away. In time, yes. What do we have to do to get to that point where we will listen and obey?
The work.
One thing comes before that, though. How do we get the motivation to do the work?
Sometimes it's pain.
We got to suffer enough pain to motivate us. I wish there was an easier answer, but we all know that that is the truth. We will suffer to the degree until the pain of staying stagnant is greater than the stepping forward. That's it. When the pain behind us pushes us, we'll move forward. Now, the way life works is we experience pain and suffering as a motivation to drive us forward until we get to the point where we allow wisdom to pull us on up from there. Does that make sense? Pain will drive us until we allow love and joy to pull us. Until that time, basically that's what we're resisting. As ridiculous as it sounds, we're resisting love and acceptance. Because it's in our nature that we have such a difficult time accepting love and wisdom. And so until we can get to that point where we're drawn by that and lifted by that, we have to have the pain and suffering to push us. Okay? Now, the purpose for this class tonight is to unburden ourselves so that we don't need so much of a driving force. And that is, the more of those hooks we can get undone from our belt loop, the less driving we need to move forward. Because that's what matters. We want to move forward so that we can establish a higher quality of life. Now, as I talked about a second ago, the real trap in life is the principle of expectation. Life gives us exactly what we expect. We're the ones that determine what we receive in life. And if life tries to give us more than what we expect, who pushes the excess away? We do. Right? It's self-regulating. We will not allow life to give us more than what we expect. We will push the extra away. How do we increase our lowered expectation so that we can receive more from life? Now, here's our desires. And many people think that, well, there's my expectations. No, if that was your expectation, you'd have what you desire. Here's our expectation. Here's our desire up here. And our frustration level is the distance between the two. Now, nobody wants to bring this one down to the level of our lowered expectation. So how do we raise this one up to our desires? We unhook the hooks from our belts. In other words, those experiences from the past that established our lowered expectation need to be erased. Now, in order to understand what those are, let's stop and think, what is a traumatic experience? Okay? A traumatic experience is a stronger person or circumstance imposing onto a lesser or younger individual. It could be something so simple as your great-grandfather beating your grandfather's butt end out in the barn. Yeah, that's a traumatic experience that we would have locked into our DNA. And to give you an idea of how much these things control us, I think I wrote about this one. It's been so long since I read my own book. I don't remember if I put this in there, but it was an experience of a woman in England that I triggered really bad 3 times on purpose. But it provided me a fantastic opportunity to make a huge difference in her life. But anyway, after I triggered her and then encouraged her to let me coach her to do the healing, as soon as she finished with it, she looked over at me and she just kind of looking like she was in shock, and she says, "My gosh, I just felt my father slug me in the mouth and yelling at me." Okay? What I did was I triggered her back to a 10-year-old child experiencing a horrible traumatic experience that she had in her memory that was affecting every relationship in her life to do with males. Because of course her father was the first major male in her life who set the precedence for how a male should be in her life.
How did you trigger her?
The woman that I was setting up a rejuvenation center for in England had told her that I could help her with her lower back problems. And she says it involves a little bit of discomfort and pain. And so I'd only known her for about a half hour while we all talked together, and everybody else cleared the room, and I had 2 big cushions on the floor, and so I started leading her over to the cushions to work on her back. And just the thought of, I don't know what to expect, started triggering her. And I could feel that energy coming from her, like she was about to panic and jump out the window or something. And she stopped me, and she looked, we were the same height, and she looked me in the eye and she says, "Is this going to hurt?" And I looked as seriously as I could, and I said, Yeah, it is. I could feel her heart beating and vibrating the room, and I practically drug her on over by the or by the cushions, and pulling her to get her down on her knees, and we were both on our knees, eye to eye again. She looked me right in the eye and she says, "Are you going to hurt me?" I said, "Yeah, I am." This woman exploded. If she wasn't held together so tight with her skin, she'd have been all over the walls. And then she tried to jump up, and so this was the third triggering. I caught her on the shoulder and held her down so she couldn't get up. By that time, she was ready to kill me, because there was no way in the world, if I'd let that woman out of the room, she'd have hated me forever, and she'd have justified why she'd like to kill me. And so I held her there, and I started yelling to her, "Karen, get out of your head and come down here." I doubled up my fingers like this and hit her in the stomach hard. I said, "Get out of your head and come down here and work with me, and we can heal this." No, too much. Usually it takes 15 seconds. It took me about 45 seconds, which felt like about a half hour, because I know everybody in the whole house thought I was killing the poor woman. But I kept hitting her in the stomach and saying, "Karen, get out of your head and come down here. I can help you to clear this. Come on." No. Finally, I got her out of her head. I said, "Just come down here and feel. Be there in loving support. It's not what you think. Get down here and feel it and hold it. Hold whoever is here. Give them unconditional love and the reassurance. What you're going through right now is going to be just fine, because you're not alone. I'm right here with you. Just get out of your head and do that." Finally, I got her to get out of her head. I could finally feel it. You know, for the first 15 seconds, she just couldn't get out of her head. Finally, I could feel that she was down in her heart. She was feeling, and she was no longer freaking out. And so she stayed present with it, and everything cleared. It only takes 15 seconds. It completely cleared, and that's when she opened her eyes and she says, "My gosh, you wouldn't believe it." She says, "I felt my father slug me in the mouth as he was yelling at me as a 10-year-old girl." Because she did what she did, because she finally got out of her head and did that procedure, which actually finally only took 15 seconds, it cleared the most powerful influence for her negative relationships. It was a huge part of her life that was controlling her life in a very negative way. It was controlling the decisions that she made. Can you see that in relationship? How she would have a tendency of looking for someone that would never punch her in the mouth or do this, or in reality, this was probably, I don't know what the relationship is, but her relationship that she had, but I would say that she probably unconsciously connected with somebody that would slug her in the mouth, because that was her true expectation, right? But now, by healing that, I never stayed in contact with her to know what happened to her relationship, whether I caused a divorce there, but at least I know that she was healthier, and that she would no longer expect to be treated that way, because that raised that area of expectation for her. Okay, now let's take a look at that traumatic experience to see what was really carried in the memory. Now, was the pain or damage of her getting punched in the mouth, did that carry on any longer than a month or whatever? No. It was all healed. So what carried on for decades?
Well, the decision she made at that moment.
The decision she
About
made,
herself.
and the story that she wrote about what happened. In other words, the perception of a 10-year-old child and what that meant to her, and the decisions she made about that, all that is what was really passed down in her memory. And the same thing is passed down in our DNA from our parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents' experiences, same way. It's their perception immediately after the experience and any decisions that they make. And a lot of those decisions, that's a good point, I didn't remember about the decision factor, but Oftentimes, a young person like that doesn't realize that they're making a decision. But we make decisions regarding our perception about what just happened or what we thought just happened and what that meant to us. And that dictates our responses from then on and our expectations. Does that make sense? Now you take hundreds of traumatic memories, which are what? Stories. It's all we're carrying is stories. And you take hundreds of those stories and it molds our lives. The reason why each one of us chose the body that we did is because they were already programmed with our life course. We recreated as much of this as we needed as our resistance in life to become stronger and wiser. Does that make sense?
Is there any value in like just taking a like sort of an impartial self-observational look at what your own lowered expectations are, like being very honest with what your expectations are about any given thing?
It's an
triggering yourself through
No,
those?
you can observe what's going on in your life, but it's kind of like, when we do a gallbladder flush, we like to see the cholesterol balls floating in the toilet, yeah? But everything else, flush a toilet and who cares what it was? It's now out of the body. It's kind of like healing through the portals of time. You don't have to know what, when, where, or anything about it.
I meant that only as a decision to consciously choose to trigger myself, in order to bring something up on purpose
We can.
in order to heal it.
We can, and two, okay, the concern is there something that we can do to help ourselves by observing reactions that we naturally have in life? Yeah, there's two ways of using that. One is, if it is a memory that you have yourself of a terrible experience and you know that it's in there, there's ways that you can use it to trigger yourself. Yes, that's good. And the other one is, if you look at certain habit patterns that are negative that you wish you could change, you already know that willpower is overrated.
Yeah.
Willpower isn't going to do it. You've got to correct cause. Willpower is trying to force the effect while the cause is still in place. So, yes, you use the activity of life and what activates or agitates that to get in touch with what needs to be dealt with from before. The best thing to hold in the forefront of our mind is that in the present I am always okay. You see, the person who I tap the shoulder of is already in the past. It's not you, it's you from 15 seconds ago. Okay, that is how present we need to hold our mind. In the present, we're always okay. That makes us the empathic parent who can feel the pain and suffering of our children. Now, there is what I call the extended me. And that is all the little versions of me all the way back to the womb and before. Then there is the extended me of my mom and my dad, my grandma, grandpa, so on and so forth, back 3 generations. There's a lot of little me's in that extended me. Okay? Lots of trauma. Now, the traumatic memories that are molding our lives are the squeakier wheels. I don't think we have to clear all of that, or we'd be doing nothing else but healing through the portals of time every day, all day long. But there are the squeaky wheels that, like you're saying, that you see a response that you have to life that you know is connected to a traumatic experience. So how do you trigger that up? How do you get in touch with it? Now, relationships are absolutely fantastic because they are the most perfect way of getting in touch with these experiences. Now, before I get any farther into that, I want to share with you the negative side of that, and that is running away from relationships that would normally trigger you and tap you into those issues. It was a woman that I worked with, about a dozen years ago, and I thought that she got what I had been trying for hours and hours and hours to help her to understand, and she proved that it all went over her head when she gave me a call and she says, "I'm in heaven." And I said, "What do you mean?" She says, "Well, I took a little bit of an early retirement. I bought a beautiful home. It's the most beautiful little nest in a gated community." She says, "I separated everybody that made me angry from my life, and I'm living up here in pure heaven. It's so wonderful." And I said, "Oh my gosh, you just entrapped yourself with your own worst enemy. That's so dangerous."
Yeah.
Now, at first, that sounds like, well, that's kind of a silly thing to say. She was dead in 3 years.
Oh my.
There was nobody to trigger her, and I knew that she had some really heavy stuff because everybody made her angry. And she couldn't get it that, hey, they're triggering you. They're not making you angry. They're triggering up what you're carrying inside. And what did she do? She took all that anger with her and put it into in solitary confinement, to where there is no one to blame, and it just rotted. It ate her away inside, and she died of cancer. Just bang, real quick. Okay, so that person that just really rubs you the wrong way needs to be your best new friend. Now, the most effective person in your life to really help you out is your spouse or your significant other or whoever you're in closest communication with or closest association with, because they know your buttons better than anybody. And see, we are really a lot wiser than we're aware of. We can telepathically solicit from another and show them quietly where our buttons are. That's the reason why whoever we're associating with most closely know just magically where our buttons are. We sold ourselves out. And we didn't understand the reason why, but this is the real reason why we brilliantly sell ourselves out in this way and show where our buttons are. Because if we really want to move forward, what we've got to do is give those people around us a get out of jail free card by thinking they're forgiven before they even make the next mistake.
Amen.
Because they aren't mistakes, they're opportunities for us to heal. Because let's say that out of 20 times, they're honestly in the wrong once. We can afford to forgive them for that and let them be as foolish or as wrong as they want to be. Because we need to learn to exercise that muscle too, the muscle of forgiveness. But in most cases, remember, if it's impacting on us, it's us, it's not them. And we are brilliantly soliciting them to push that button to provide us, again, that opportunity to heal what we're carrying inside. It's the fast track to move into the realm that we really want to live in, that will bring our lives the joy that we're looking for. As long as we're being held back by these anchors of traumatic memory, we're going to continue being self-destructive, and we're going to continue making safe decisions, safe choices, rather than wise choices. Does that make sense now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. You talk about understanding human nature. If you look at it from this point of view of why we automatically make the choices that we do, and what we could do, how much greater that is, it makes all of life so much simpler. Life isn't all so complex anymore. It's kind of like, well, why are we here? Oh, we're here to become wise. Okay, how do I most rapidly become wise? Well, we unhook the anchors by doing the healing through the portals of time. And now we're talking about, again, is there anybody in here that has a phobia, like claustrophobia or fear of heights or anything? Elevators. Okay. If I share a secret with you, how would you like to know that you can clear that on your own anytime you want in the next week. But you've got to believe what I'm saying and do it. It takes you 15 seconds to clear most phobias. Now, if it's generational, you may have to do the same procedure 2 or 3 times. Let's take the elevators, okay? You stand in front of an elevator and you think about getting into it. It triggers you, just the thought of getting into it. Okay, what would you do? You do not have any phobia yourself. In the present, you have no phobias, you have no fears. In the present, you have no need. If there isn't somebody standing beside you with a gun to your head, you have no reason to be feeling fear. Whether you're at a high level and you say that you're afraid of heights, or standing in front of an elevator. It's not true. That's a false perception. Okay? That's what fear is, false perceptions. Okay, the truth is, you are completely okay in the present. But there's somebody there that got stuck in a box or a closet or something else at a younger age or another generation that is totally freaking out. And your brain tapped into that and said, oh, watch out for that box. I've experienced that through the extended me. I have experienced that before, and trust me, it's not good. Don't go in there. Okay? So, it's that person, wherever and whenever they were. Okay? So what you do is as soon as you get triggered, you come out of your head and you hold whoever that is and give them unconditional love and keep reaffirming what you're going through right now is going to be just fine because you're not alone. I'm right here with you. Okay, now what's actually happening when we do that? This is the important mechanics of this process to understand what is actually happening. Now, remember that whoever is having the problem is stuck somewhere in one of these folds of time. And guess what? We're stuck right here. So you and I, if you want to get to the bottom line truth here, you and I can't do diddly squat. Right? We can't time travel. Somebody has to time travel here to take care of somebody back here. Right? Okay. Since we can't time travel, who gets to do the job? Soul. Now, we don't, when you stop and think about the difference between the little house of horrors here between our ears and the power and wisdom of soul, in fact, what I'd like to do is just very quickly review a way of getting a little bit greater glimpse of the power of soul. First of all, you think about an autistic child. Okay? Here, mom and dad are driving down the freeway and little autistic boy sitting in the back seat. And he just glances out the window right quick and says, oh, there's 53 cows out in the field there. And so the parents pull over and they spend the next 10 or 15 minutes counting cows and realize, wow, there's 53 cows out there. Now, how in the world did that child glance out there and know that there's 53 cows? Well, that'll become clear when I tell you another experience. How many of you have heard of Danny and Brinkley? Guy that was struck by lightning a couple times. He was killed twice by lightning and once with a heart attack, so he became quite familiar with what it's like to be out of the body.
Wow.
But I was working on his back this one day, and he was kind of contemplating that time because it wasn't too long after he'd had the heart attack and had died for the 3rd time. And he says, it's interesting, kind of raised up on his elbows, and he says, it's kind of interesting, but as soon as you leave your body, he says, all of a sudden you're just so aware. Now keep in mind, he wasn't thinking from the position that we're looking at it of the two opposing expressions put together of the soul and the physical body. He was just looking at it as, here I was a body, now I'm this massive energy and intelligence. But he says, as soon as you leave your body, he says, you can glance down at this floor, and he says, you know the exact number of fibers that make up the entire carpet. He says, you can look at that wall and instantly know the exact number of particles that make up the entire wall. Now, is that awareness or is that awareness? That's pretty neat brilliance, huh? But we can't experience that. Why? Because we're stuck in this meat bag that is limited by 5 senses. But that same brilliance is right there But there are spiritual laws that don't allow soul to turn up the volume. That's why we call it the still small voice. Because it's still small, because we control the volume and we turn it down because we'd rather learn by ourselves, right? What a dumb thing. What a dumb decision. Anyway, you think about that brilliance that is available to us. Now, stop and think about this union that happened when you were a fetus. Okay? Now here's this little fetus, an adult soul, coming to this fetus. Absolute unconditional love, brilliance, awareness beyond our imagination. Aligning with the brain and the nervous system of this fetus. What do you think the attitude of that soul is regarding this fetus? That's my baby. Motherly instinct. This is my baby.
How beautiful.
There isn't anybody in the whole universe that loves each one of us more than our own soul. That is the reason why, and what is that soul doing 24 hours a day? Besides waiting for us to get wiser, waiting for us to listen. Right? Nothing else is going on. We are the focus. This little pea brain and this little body is the major focus of all that brilliance, separated out of the whole universe just for each one of us, ready to guide us the second we start listening, wishing that we would listen and obey. See, there's another catch to this little dance. Soul has to feel everything we feel. But that's not very fun. What are we imposing on poor soul? Our stubbornness, our refusal to learn and listen. But remember, it's a dance. We both are learning together. So we can't feel too sorry for soul. Because each one of us is 100% the brain and body and soul. Okay? And this is the dance of life for both of us to become wise. Obviously, soul is far ahead of us in the realm of wisdom, but still needed this exercise to become strong enough to stop the animal from barking and biting people. To the degree that the animal still barks and bites, soul is still not wise enough to rein the animal in. Okay? It's our responsibility. Don't let the animal bark and bite. The absolute goal of life is to get to the point where we're wise enough where we can allow the unconditional love of soul to express through the brain and body. Does that make sense? Then we know we're finally learning and we're becoming wise. Wisdom equals unconditional love, kindness, and all the attributes of the higher wisdom of soul. Soul is our conscience. Soul is our guide. Our immediate everything, source of inspiration. Soul can tap into the big computer because it's the same essence. Does that feel true and right? Because if it don't feel good here, it ain't true. Now, to help us along, how are we doing on time? Yeah, we're doing okay. Okay. There's two great stumbling blocks that we all have, and it's part of the survival mechanism. Let's take a minute and trash a couple of them, okay? Two of the most destructive forces in our life is one is the inner critic. How many of you are aware of the inner critic? Okay. How many know you have somebody in there that you don't see, but they're always telling you things about yourself you don't want to hear anymore? That is the inner critic. Now, if we don't think about it, if we don't learn about it, and we don't know any better, we would think that it's a part of ourselves that is very critical, but it's an integrated part of who we are, right? Some people, if they don't really stop and think about it, may think that this is God kind of trying to get us to do better. What is the inner critic? The inner critic is a tape recorder. It's a dumb tape recorder. It's an essential, basic part of our survival mechanism. But it's a dumb tape recorder. Now, if you ever watch some of the National Geographic movies, you'll see like a mama with her cubs around her, whether it's a wolf or a bear, whatever. One of the cubs starts going for the opening to go out and adventure, and she will growl and nip it in the bottom. And the little cub will scurry back again. Through little gestures like that, the mother is teaching the child to be cautious of danger. Okay? That is the purpose of the inner critic, this tape recorder. It records the dominant parent's voice. Don't do this, or you're going to get spanked, or you're going to get grounded. Clean up your room, do this, do that, do that. The inner critic is what in nature would save us from danger. In our own society, it's what causes us to start being motivated to clean our room up before we got spanked or grounded, right? So in that way, for the first few years of our lives, it's a real support. It's a real asset. But as an adult, guess what? It becomes the most destructive force, the second most destructive force in our lives. We'll get to the most destructive in a second. The second most destructive force in our lives. Why? Because it keeps reminding us of every negative thing that it's recorded as though that's who we are. Okay? But as I said, it's just a tape recorder. Why don't we shred that sucker? You game? You want to shred your tape recorder? Okay, everybody close your eyes. Now in the imagination, we can do anything we want, so take a little walk around your brain right now. Okay, close your eyes and see yourself walking around your brain. Walk around to the back side and look down, and there your eyes are open. Close your eyes. You're peeking. Okay, as you look down now on the top of this table in the back of your brain, there is a tape recorder. Pick it up, walk around to the front of your brain, and now in the front of your brain, you look down and there's this great big shredder. Now you can drive a car into that thing. It'll shred anything into little tiny pieces. Hold the tape recorder over it and drop it and listen to it crunch into 1,000,000 pieces. It's done. Okay, now, go ahead and open your eyes. That tape recorder has been recording everything that the brain thought you did wrong and kept playing it back to you over and over again. It's that voice in the back of your head that keeps saying, you make a mistake, oh, that was pretty stupid, you know? You recognize that voice? Okay, it's gone. It was a tape recorder. It's gone. You just shredded it.
I saw a bumper sticker that says, "Don't believe what your brain tells you."
Okay, now shred that part of the brain so it doesn't tell you anything again. Now, you can see if you did an effective job of this. Do you know how you can do that? It's a simple experiment. You just take an egg out and drop it on the floor, and it makes a big mess. If that doesn't pull a response of that tape recorder, nothing will. If you don't hear, "That was stupid," or "Are you dumb?" then you know that you shredded the tape recorder. Okay? There is no reason for you to ever hear that voice again. The only reason that you would hear it again, and believe me, this is the second most destructive force in everybody's lives. And if you allow it to be shredded, it's gone. There's no reason to hear that voice again. The only reason why you would ever hear it again is if you recreated another tape recorder and started taping some of those old memories. Otherwise, it's done. Now, what would you suppose is the number one greatest cause of our problems? What is the most destructive force in our everyday lives?
Fear.
What activates the fear?
Pain.
Survival, pain, our perceptions about these. What do we call that?
Interpretations.
And our interpretations, what do we call the collection of that stuff? Our beliefs. Our beliefs. Now, there's a trick question that I usually throw out just for the fun of it, and that is, did Jesus have a belief system? Do you see why that's a trick question? Usually it's, well, yeah. No, he knew, just like we do. We know what we know. Everything else we believe. Do you see the difference? Now, why is it that whatever we believe, we're willing to defend in whatever way we need? Why is that? What kind of a reaction is this? Defensive.
Yeah.
Fear-based. What does that tell us about our beliefs?
You're doubting them.
We may not believe them.
You're doubting them.
We have to defend them.
No, it's that they are all stored here in the little house of horrors. They are part of the survival mechanism. That is the clue of what a belief is how we defend them with fear. Truth is self-evident. It doesn't need to be defended. It is. It just is. Our opinions about truth is called a belief. It's a perception. It's an opinion. Every once in a while, a belief is true, too. But if you saw the whole collection here, now do you know why we're so ready to defend our belief system? Where did our beliefs come from?
Experience.
Parents, society, brothers, sisters, friends, teachers, television, experience. Okay, now, coming into life, because of our own experiences, sometimes we look in this collection and we see some of these that they don't fit anymore. And so we throw them out. And we find others that would fit better, so we replace those. The reason why we're so ready to defend the contents of the BS bucket here, that's belief system, of course, is because we have weeded through them. And this is what we believe, right? Now, if we took the whole bucket and ran it through that shredder, what would be the reaction of the brain?
There goes my identity.
Holy cow, you destroyed everything, right? My identity, everything. You destroyed everything. What would the heart say?
Woohoo!
Woohoo, freedom! My gosh, I don't have to listen to all that BS anymore. Do you see the difference between believing and knowing? What you know. Nobody can take that from you. Never. What we know, we know. But what we believe, we're ready to fight for, because we're afraid that it might not be true. Because we don't know it, we only believe it. And so, the most destructive force in our lives, if we could run that through a shredder, we're free to be open to what is true in life. We're not weighing it against our BS bucket. That limits us from being able to accept what really is in life. Because if it doesn't fit in this bucket, it must not be right. Everybody experience that, of how we use the contents of this bucket to weigh all of life? Look how inhibiting that was. Run it through the shredder.
I don't want to talk about politics, but I got some ideas running through my head about it.
Same thing. What does everybody say?
Yeah.
Do not discuss
Yeah.
religion or politics. Okay? See, I'm very careful that I don't niggle anybody's beliefs. I just say, hey, run the whole thing through the shredder.
Yeah.
Who cares what was in it? Run it through. And anything that remains is good. What you know to be true, keep it, because you can't change it. It is what it is. Isn't that a safer, more solid ground to stand on? Okay. If we get rid of all the old garbage that inhibits us, we've cleared that voice in our heads, we shred our BS bucket, we are free to be open to what really is, and it's solid ground that we're treading on then. We're not playing this human game anymore. We're in true reality. Okay? Now, let's take a closer look at how we can clear those anchors from our belts and see what we're actually doing. Now again, we looked earlier at what a traumatic experience was. And it doesn't matter whether there's physical pain or what involved. All that is carried down through the DNA and through our memory is the perception about what happened. So if there was a way for that story to not be written, we wouldn't have it any longer. In fact, if there was a way to go back in time and stop the story from being written, if it were a generational issue, it would be erased from our DNA instantly. Do you see how that would happen? Now that's how powerful this process is. It will actually erase that memory, that story, from the DNA.
Wow.
Yeah, wow. That's why I say there isn't anything more important for our well-being to improve the quality of our lives than this procedure. That's why I want to make sure that everybody understands every detail about it before we leave tonight, okay? Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we can't do anything about this because we're stuck in this time, and we can't time travel, but soul can. Soul can use our brain as the GPS to know exactly where that individual is that really needs the help. Now, soul is not going to stop the traumatic experience. Otherwise, that's voiding a very important part of life. We gotta go through hell. That's part of our lives. We gotta go through the hell. But soul can stop the individual from writing the mental story about what happened. How do you think soul can do that?
Going back and healing.
What would the healing be? What would be involved in the healing?
Unconditional love.
That's it. Envelop the individual with unconditional love, and the feeling of exhilaration paralyzes their ability to perceive what they thought they were perceiving, so the story doesn't get written this time. Now, the reason why I know that that is a fact is because after teaching this procedure and developing it for almost a dozen years, there's one day that I was sitting here thinking, I wonder what it feels like to be on the receiving end of this. And as soon as I thought that, I very, very clearly remembered a time when I was 17 years of age experiencing the receiving end of this. Now you think, wait a second. Now that was decades before it was even developed. How could that be? I don't know. I don't understand time that well. But I remembered a time when I was 17 years of age, and I had a very abusive father who just physically abused me. And as I stepped away, instead of feeling hate, anger, and resentment, as soon as I stepped away, immediately I could hear music in the back of my brain, and I felt the most exhilarated feeling of joy. And instead of being aware of the pain or anything, I started laughing inside and wondering, what in the heck is going on? This is weird. This is not what I should be feeling right now.
Yeah.
I mean, it was so exhilarating, and I was so caught up with that feeling of joy and comfort and peace. I know my brain didn't write a story about what just happened because I have no recollection of what happened, and it doesn't matter how much pain was involved. I can't remember anything about it because I didn't write a story about it. That story is written automatically, unconsciously, along with the feelings of, wish I had a two before, now I turn around. Things like that, we embellish the story. But there was nothing because I was so caught up in that exhilaration that no story was written. And to this day, I can't tell you what happened, anything about it. And even if my arm was cut off, I know that I wouldn't have felt any pain. It was that great of an elevation of feelings. So I know that this works. I've observed it work again and again and again. You talk about how long does it take to get rid of claustrophobia? I would say that that might be as difficult as a friend of mine that I helped overcome a traumatic feeling of walking barefoot through the grass. Now, obviously, there's no reason. This is a 73-year-old woman. How much chance is there for this 73-year-old woman to have a phobia of walking barefoot in the grass? That could do it. That would terrorize all of us. Obviously, whenever she thought of walking barefoot through the grass, there was probably a 2-year-old that got triggered up that saw a snake go through the grass or something and was traumatized by whatever went through the grass, right? Most likely it was a snake, right? Okay, but every time she looked at the grass and thought about walking barefoot in the grass, that 2-year-old would come to her because the grass would trigger her and she'd feel the fear of the 2-year-old and freak out and think that it was her feeling that trauma. So what we've got to do, first of all, is realize in the present, we are always okay. Even if we had a traumatic experience 5 minutes ago, in the present, we're okay. We need to be here in loving support for ourselves from 5 minutes ago or whatever. We don't have to know who, when, where, or anything. You don't have to know anything. All you have to do, because remember, we can't do anything anyway but get out of the way. We're not doing anything. Now remember, the reason why soul is referred to as the comforter is because that's one of the major jobs of soul, is to comfort us. And now if we feel like we're freaking out because of grass, comforter is going to stay here and say, oh, you're okay, come on, calm down, right? Because that's what comforters do. But if we can get our minds prepared to realize, hey, I have no reason to be afraid of the grass. It's not me. But somebody right here, it's impacting on me, therefore it's in here. Somebody's having a problem with grass, and so I will be here in loving support for whoever this is. I don't have to know who, when, where, nothing. I'm just here in loving support, out of my head, into my feelings, feeling unconditional love and support for whoever this is. Now, how does this work? We get out of our heads and stop feeling sorry for ourselves. Because as long as we feel sorry for ourselves, comfort is going to be comforting us. If we can get out of our heads and be there in loving support for whoever it is that needs our help, soul can then use our brain as the GPS to know at which fold in time this traumatized child is, zip back through the portals of time because soul is eternal, not stuck in time like we are, zips through the portals of time, envelops that individual with unconditional love, and paralyzes them with joy to where they can't write the story.
Beautiful.
Does that make sense now?
Yeah.
We're not doing anything, but we've got to get out of our heads so we don't stop soul from doing that. We don't direct soul to say, could you do this? It's an unsaid agreement already. And remember how much more brilliant soul is than us. So we don't have to direct traffic or ask or plead or beg or point the fingers. Just get out of the way. Get out of the head and show, hey, I'm okay. And it'll happen automatically. And it happens every single time. With any phobia or any traumatic feelings, whatever it is, it happens, it works every time. And it takes 15 seconds, generally, to clear one phobia. If you have to do it 2 or 3 times, whatever it takes, but you'll clear the phobia. Did you have a question?
Yeah, just something triggers, and let's say it doesn't matter whether it's anger or sadness or grief or whatever it is. It takes a second to process, okay, I'm actually really fine. But how do I move from the feeling, which has an intensity to it, let's say it's negative, to unconditional love?
We gotta
and I can tap here all I want, but I still feel this, and there's a journey, seemingly, to get from this very negative place to this extremely positive
No.
place.
Okay,
Seemingly.
we cannot change how we feel, right? But think of the brain as being nothing more than the spinner wheel in a board game. It directs our focus, and the power of soul goes wherever we direct the focus of our attention. That is the most powerful principle in our lives, the principle of focused attention. Now, there's no real power in the brain. That's why I refer to it as the little house of horrors. But wherever we direct the focus of our attention, the subject matter activates our power. If we focus on something that activates fear, the power of fear starts creating. See, as sons and daughters of God, that's one thing that we cannot stop doing. We cannot stop creating. We're going to create in every direction that we look. We're creating constantly. We can't stop. Therefore, what we do need to do is control where the little house of horrors, where that spinner wheel is focused. Now, yes, you cannot change that feeling that comes up, but you can change this immediately. And what you do is you get out of here, come down into your feelings. Just do it. Just do it. Because if you prepare your mind ahead of time and realize that those are not your feelings. If somebody doesn't actually make you feel that way, basically, you are an empathic mother feeling the crying of your children. Now, as long as you choose to, you can sit down and cry with your children, but it's a waste of time. And when you get that's what you're doing, is you're sitting down and crying with your children instead of being strong for them. You're not separating you from them in your mind. Yes, because especially since you're a mother, or you're a female, you're going to have motherly instincts, and you're going to feel like crying with your children, because every parent can feel the pain of their children. That's empathy. We are all empathic parents. Even if you don't have children of your own, you're still an empathic parent, because you feel the crying children in the pit of your belly. And whenever you feel that, yes, you feel like you want to cry, or you want to be angry, or whatever they're feeling. But you got to prepare your mind ahead of time that is not me.
It's not me.
I am feeling the pain of a child, a crying child. These are what I call our crying children that come to the pit of our stomach. And you've got to prepare your mind ahead of time and realize, I am the parent. And I'm not going to sit down and cry with my children. I'm going to be there in strong support. Because to sit down and cry with them, or to do what we normally do, what is that? We either run for a chocolate bar, or we start an argument, or we run away, or change the subject, or start an argument. We do something to distract us so that we don't have to feel that.
Right.
That's exactly like telling your child, hey, hush up and go away and deal with your own problems. I'm feeling sad here. Not realizing that it's the child's pain that made us feel sad. So what we've got to do is be strong and be there in support of the child, and realize that if there's nothing right here, and if the person standing in front of us really didn't make us that angry, we got to realize, okay, they're forgiven anyway. Utilize every opportunity as an opportunity to heal the crying children. It's a great investment to give everybody the benefit of the doubt and utilize those opportunities to heal the crying children.
Does meditation play any kind of a role here?
No.
No.
Meditation is a practice that helps us to learn how to listen better, so that we are more easily guided in our daily life. But this is more bang, right in your face when you get triggered. I'll tell you a time when it was kind of funny, because I was in Amsterdam, and this young kid triggered me. And it was interesting, because at first I didn't realize I was triggered until I started realizing, because he operated in a way that wasn't right for somebody working in retail outlet. And here I caught myself thinking, I wonder if I should get a hold of his manager and help him to realize that his employee isn't dealing in the way that he should. And then I started laughing because I realized, hey, the kid triggered me. And it was funny. The real reason why it was funny is because I went down to do the healing, and I was down for about 5 seconds, and I popped right back up, and I thought, yeah, I don't want to do that. And then I realized, okay, that isn't me. It isn't now, and I can handle anything for 15 seconds. So I went down and finished it and cleared it. But that taught me two things: to become more observant of being triggered. And when you hear yourself grinding, chewing worms in the back of your head, there's a 100% chance that you're triggered. And to stop the thought process and just take care of it, and then your mind is free to think whatever you want. As long as you're triggered, you're not free to think what you want. You're sitting there chewing worms all the time. Got it? If you find yourself still dirty, you're triggered. It's impacted on you. Get in there and heal the child so you're free to feel and think whatever you want.
Okay, I get the trigger part
Yeah.
completely,
Yeah.
that's being triggered.
Yep.
I don't understand the heal part. How do you get in there and heal it?
You don't, because we can't do diddly squat about it.
Okay, so you understand you're triggered, like she was saying.
Yeah, and you realize that I'm okay, I'm the empathic mother.
So you actually say that?
No, you prepare your mind ahead of time and know that you are the empathic mother for these crying children that are going to come to you.
So
Now,
you
why-
prepare, but you don't know when you're going to get triggered, so how do you prepare your mind ahead of time?
You start from this class time, every chance you get, think about it and realize, okay, all these times when I get triggered, it's not me. It's
Crying children.
my brain is looking at a DNA memory or a memory in my brain, and the reason why you feel it at the pit of your stomach is because that is the highest point of awareness in the body. And so when you feel that sadness or the anger or whatever you're feeling here, whether you think somebody made you angry or sad doesn't matter. Give them the benefit of the doubt now and just know, okay, I'm triggered. And what does that mean? It means get out of my head and be there in loving support for whoever this is. And you can do that. You just drop down. Just realize it doesn't do you a bit of good to feel sorry for yourself or to think about it or try and figure it out. Nothing. Just get out of your head. And if you have to think of the word feel to accomplish that, don't think, because if you think, you're going to be in your head. Think, feel, and feel what's going on here. Don't be afraid of it, but just go into it, feel it, and be there in loving support for whoever may be there, and review in your mind something to the effect of what you're going through right now is going to be just fine because you're not alone. I'm right here with you. And it's an automatic thing. Soul knows exactly what to do. Soul is doing it anyway. We just have to get out of the way.
So if you practice this, and I understand it, technically you should never get angry then. Or
After you
technically
get those
should
cleared-
never feel sad. I mean, after you clear it immediately,
Well,
you could be over it.
how many crying children do we have?
A lot.
Yeah, we got a
It's
lot.
happening all the time.
It's happening all the time. So after
But it
about
you won't keep it, and like you're saying, you won't make
The
let it
most
set in and make you angry or angry. You'll just let
no,
it go.
you.
Isn't that
Oh
true?
no, yeah, you clear it within 15 seconds. Yeah, you do the procedure and you feel the immediate result.
What you will notice kind of in response to that is that if another person does that again, or somebody, whatever the same situation comes up again, it'll bounce right off you. It doesn't have a place to stick anymore. And you'll go, oh wow, you'll remember, wait, that used to bug me. It doesn't bug me anymore.
It
You
doesn't.
develop an immunity to it?
No,
No.
you clear the reason why you used
It
to
has nowhere to
react.
stick in you anymore.
It no longer causes you to react. See, the difference between somebody making you angry or sad, one person can tell two people the same thing. And if one gets angry and the other one shrugs and says, what's the big deal there? It impacted on this one. There's a crying child needing to be healed. They're probably sitting there arguing or whatever, and this one says, what's the big deal? You see the difference? If it impacts on you, it is you, and you have the responsibility to be there in loving support for that child to to heal their problems, not yours. You don't have a problem. None of us have a problem in the present. All the problems, even if it's ours from last week, they're all in the past. They're all in one of those folds of time, happening right now at this very second, all at the same time. But when we get triggered, it's like collapsing time. And we're connected immediately because the quality of memory in the DNA and the brain is in Technicolor. It's perfect. We think that because we don't have that clear of a recollection. I washed my tongue today and I can't do a thing with it. We think that the memory is as foggy, that recall, but it's in Technicolor. It's like re-experiencing it. In fact, it's so much so the brain can't tell the difference between an actual experience and one of these memories. That's how good the memory is. Yes.
Wow. Does it mean that you don't do it right when they come back?
No, it means you have
deal with it, you
more
did it.
to do. See, if you do the healing through the portals of time, now there's only one time that I'm aware of where the whole issue cleared in one treatment. And here it was my aunt who was 73 years of age, and all of her life she couldn't even go for a long drive, she couldn't go on a boat or anything for motion sickness. And I explained exactly what to do. I didn't go into anywhere near the detail that I'm doing tonight. I just gave her the 5-minute version of it. And about 4 months later, I was on this cruise with she and her family, and my brother and I went on the cruise. And on the third day, it dawned on me. I said, hey, wait a second. I thought you said that when you went on cruises, you were always down in the nurse's station popping these little pink pills for being nauseous all the time. And I've seen you everywhere that I've been on this boat since we got here. And she says, oh, well, you told me that thing to do, and I did it, and now I don't have a problem.
Wow.
One time, 15 seconds, cleared a problem that she'd had for a lifetime. 15 seconds. Look at the suffering she went through over a lifetime of throwing up every time she went for a long drive. And any time that somebody rocked something, it'd make her sick, she'd throw up. And she did remember that whatever happened, it happened when she was about 6 years of age, because that's when it started. Okay, so it was one experience. She suffered with it through her whole life, and it took her 15 seconds to heal that one little 6-year-old, and it was gone. Now, like with the lady with the trauma of the grass, I don't know if we needed to take 2 shots at it, but I first of all told her to picture herself walking through the grass, and she kind of shuddered, and so I guided her through doing the procedure. Then I asked her to take her shoes off and reach out and touch the grass with her toe, and she kind of shuddered, and so I just, to make sure, I had her do it again. And then with her shoes off, I grabbed her hand and we went for a walk through the grass. No problem at all. First time in her whole adult life that she had walked barefoot in the grass. She didn't have a second's hesitation. With claustrophobia, there was a woman, I don't know if she needed this many attempts at it. I think that she was carrying a generational issue because it was really deep. I mean, a lot of you know about the aqua massage in here. You're not even in that thing, but it freaked her out just to look at somebody getting in there. It freaked her out so bad she couldn't even watch that. So I had her imagine herself standing beside it. She did a healing, and I said, just keep doing that. Go and stand closer to it, then picture yourself opening it, picture yourself getting in, and then do each of those steps until you can get in and give yourself a massage. Because I had a bunch of other things to do, but I helped her through the first step, and I just told her, just keep going one step at a time. And in about 5 minutes, 2 or 3 women came into the building there where we had another center, and they said, oh my gosh, she's in there giving herself a massage. Where before, she couldn't even stand watching somebody else opening it up because it would overwhelm her. It would trigger her. Okay, so she probably had to go through the procedure 3, maybe 4 times, which would indicate it's probably a generational issue. But still, maybe it took her 3 or 4 whole minutes. She cleared a whole generational issue there. And remember, anything that was generational got erased from her DNA. It was erased, so she didn't have to deal with anything. Now keep in mind, every form of counseling and all psychological support is helping you, the parent, deal with what it feels like to have a crying child a couple times a day come to you for help. It teaches you how to deal with that so that it doesn't affect your life. Well, in a world of cause and effect, it's a fool's game. What we've got to do is clear those causal issues that lower our expectations and mold our lives in a negative way. We can actually clear them now with this technique. Now, is there anyone who does not clearly understand the procedure? Does every single person feel confident that you can now do this the next time you get triggered and clear it? Now, if there's any doubt, remember, you can't do diddly squat anyway, but get out of the way. Okay? It's that simple that all you got to do is not mess it up. Just get out of the way and it happens automatically. Yeah, John.
Before you were talking about the new fetus and join with the soul.
Yes.
Okay, so you believe that this soul has come from another life, and in other words, the soul goes from body to body to body.
All that matters is we come from the spirit realm before we get into the body. Otherwise, anybody that hasn't run their belief system through the shredder will have a contention here. So we came from the spirit realm, came into the fetus. We'll hold it at that.
So does this soul determine what kind of person that little person's going to be?
It's a cooperative.
Being a good person or a bad person?
It's a cooperative thing, because sometimes the personality can be pretty strong and soul can't quite rein it in. It's a dance. It's a dance. It is the soul's responsibility, because it is the soul that is the conscience for the brain and body. But sometimes if it's a strong, it's like no matter how great of a parent you are, if you have a strong-minded child that just rebels or does what they please, sometimes you can't rein them in. Okay? It is our responsibility from the soul level to do that. And if we're diligently enough, now how can we help a rebellious personality? Let's just think of it from the soul level. What can we do? You can't really force them, because all you know is unconditional love. It's a process of using wisdom to wisely coerce. Okay? But once the conscious mind knows the rules of the game, the conscious mind starts becoming more cooperative and realizing that, by rebelling against the wisdom of soul, it's only hurting itself and causing greater pain and suffering for itself. And so life itself is the greatest teacher. I used to believe that we could really boost and help people to raise to a higher level. But you can't. There is no way in the world that we can compete with circumstances, because circumstances are self-created by each individual. There is nobody in the whole universe that can create the exact hell that each one of us needs better than we can do for ourselves. I mean, we got it to a science. Nobody can compete with that. So the best we can do is inspire others through loving support to listen to the wisdom within. Because each one of us is guided in exactly the way we need to be guided. And knowing that, see, basically, most everything that I've said tonight, everybody already knew. All I did was give you the words to the inspiration that you already had. Otherwise, you wouldn't be sitting here tonight. Okay? You already knew this stuff. He just didn't have the words to know what it meant. Yes.
Is there a development of the soul, the primitive soul, as opposed to a highly evolved soul?
Yes, it's considered the age of the soul, which has nothing to do with time. It's all just gaining wisdom. And that's,
Through this medium, the soul can advance,
yes,
right?
yes. By having the resistance that these little meat, brain, and bodies provide, that helps us to grow. In fact, that's the reason why some guardian angels encourage a soul to choose a deformed body or a body that is having great difficulty in life, because it's like somebody that is choosing heavier weights. There's a greater resistance that they have to work with.
Kind of like Christ a little bit.
Now
He had to vary a lot.
yeah, but he was a graduate. We're kindergarten. We got a lot of exercising to go before we can get to that point. Man, to know, to have an absolute vision of exactly what in the heck is going to happen to you while you're getting the flesh ripped off your body and spit on and treated like dirt. And then, see, everybody believes that raising Lazarus was Christ's greatest miracle. Do you know what his real greatest miracle was? Knowing what he could do to get out of all of that and submitting. Can you imagine how much power that would take? Because see, he could feel everything we feel. He knew the pain that he was about to go through because he had the vision in Technicolor. He knew exactly what it was going to feel like. And he knew that he could dematerialize and forget the whole thing. But instead, he submitted to the soldiers and went forward with it. That was his greatest miracle. And we're nowhere near that strong. The greatest willpower we can come up with, if we could zap somebody that is going to beat us half to death, we'd zap them. We got a long way to go. Anyway, oh shoot, we're on 15 minutes up past, nobody told me? All right, thanks for coming, guys. Good night.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
You know, I can